all across CNY. It's the 315. Here's Brian Higgins.
All right, rolling along here on this Thursday in the Kiss. Got a little football talk there with the new head coach. And now, time to shift our attention over to the hoops. Both teams coming off of wins, home wins, in the inaugural ACC-SEC Challenge. The whole challenge ended up with the ACC winning 7 and the SEC winning 7. The home teams won almost all of the games. The home games are the real winner of the challenge. It will be a home game for Virginia this Saturday down in Charlottesville. Nooner, Cavs, and the Orange. We welcome in our friend Greg Madia from the Daily Progress down that way in Charlottesville. Greg, thanks for hopping on. And, man, that was a very Virginia-style win last night, was it not, against Texas A&M?
Yeah, it really was. And what was so interesting afterward was Buzz Williams, the A&M coach, former Virginia Tech coach, back in the Commonwealth of Virginia, said, he's played Virginia so many times, right? It was 10 times, I think, between the 5 years he was there at Virginia Tech, and then once more, so 11 times after last night. But he had said, with how Virginia defends, Texas A&M turned the ball over 16 times. You can't turn the ball over that much because the possessions are so limited against UVA. He said it was just bad math. Right? When you give the ball away that many times, that's few possessions. It's just not going to end well. So he that's what he said after the game, and I thought it was interesting. Virginia forcing a few more turnovers this year than recent seasons, and he said it's a different, a little more upgraded, intensified pack defense for the Hoos.
Yeah, looking at the numbers here, obviously, Virginia's defense is always at minimum under Tony Bennett, very good, and some years it's like as good as anybody's in the country. I'd say in many years it's been as good as anybody's in the country. Like the last few years it have been the variety where it's been it's good, but not quite as good. It's just 7 games, but looking at it this year, Greg, does it feel like it's back to this is a Virginia defense?
Yeah, I would say so, and they're getting steals, they're forcing turnovers, they're blocking more shots. And it's interesting because they're not playing a traditional big man, really, but they're still getting blocked shots, whether it's from Ryan Dunn or Leon Bond or Jake Groves, kind of those stretch 4 types, I guess. If you want to put them in that category, wing guards, if you want to call them those kind of in between players for UVA. So they're doing some different things. Of course, it's all headed by Reese Beekman, the defending ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and just a tremendous defensive player. He had 3 steals last night, a couple of blocks as well, and he kind of sets the tone. And that was one of the interesting things going into the season, Brian, was they brought in some transfers and freshmen. So it's a different-looking roster than it was last year, right? No more Kie Clark, Jaden Gardner's gone, Armand Franklin's gone. So they turned over the roster quite a bit, and the main 3 pieces they brought back were Reese Beekman, Isaac Neely, and Ryan Dunn. So they had to catch up to speed quite a few players, including Andrew Rohde, who starts, the transfer guard from St. Thomas, Jacob Groves, the transfer from Oklahoma, Leon Bond, he was in the program, redshirt freshman, didn't play last year, and then some true freshmen, Blake Buchanan, Elijah Gertrude. They had to catch those guys up on the pack and defending in Tony Bennett's system, which you hear over and over again from players who played in it, that it takes time. So I'm a little surprised that it's come together quickly, and they're turning up the defensive pressure at a pretty good rate.
And you mentioned it, Greg. It's a very young team. I'm not used to seeing a starting lineup so young. When you look at Virginia with 2 sophomores and 2 freshmen out there, and then it is Beekman. Obviously, you do have a great long-term veteran to lean on. I'm thinking back to the offseason. You spend so much time these days looking at the transfer portal and who's leaving for the draft and all this. It felt like for a while, right? Like Beekman had a foot and a half out the door. How important was it to get him back and lock him in for this season?
Oh, absolutely huge. I mean, I don't know what they would have done at the point guard spot. Maybe Rohde could have handled the job, but I think the plan was for him to take over the point guard job, assuming he stayed. And they need him to do that. The way he can assist the basketball, the way he understands what Tony Bennett not only wants defensively but offensively too. They're going to go as he goes. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but you need with a roster. With so many new faces, younger players too in the mix, you need that veteran who's been around, who's been through the battles, has hit game-winning shots. Right? You need that type of presence, that type of voice, and he's that guy for them this year. He's being asked to score the basketball a little bit more. He's not going to force shots, but he knows he has to score it more. He's done that in the early going a little bit. Was good last night against A&M, had 12 points, 5 assists. They moved the basketball really, really well last night and playing with a little bit smaller of a lineup. So his return has been absolutely paramount to Virginia's early success this year.
Yeah, no, beat A&M last night, 59-47. Have won everything except for a pretty bad loss to Wisconsin a couple of weeks back now as Virginia is 6-1. They'll be taking on Syracuse at noon on Saturday. Our pregame coverage will begin right here at 11 o'clock as per usual. Greg Madia of the Daily Progress down in Charlottesville is our guest. All right, so as mentioned, you said it. It's a very young team around Reese. Like, of that group, who's the next guy, do you think? Who's the next guy after Beekman that's going to be looked at as the next star down in Charlottesville?
Yeah, it's probably Ryan Dunn. He's the athletic. Last year he was their kind of energizer and creator off the bench in a 6th, 7th man type role. This year he's starting, and they're kind of expecting him to carry that energy through. The way he jumps and dunks the basketball it makes people stand up in the crowd. He blocks shots very, very well, and he got some high praise too from Buzz Williams last night. He said, everybody knows Beekman's an NBA defender, but what people don't realize is Ryan Dunn's not far behind either. So he understands his role within the pack, and that's so critical with Tony Bennett's defense. He's so long and athletic that it's tough for opponents to get off clean shots against him. And then the way he flies, he can make up mistakes with opponents going for layups around the rim. If there's a miss assignment or something like that, he's able to make it up with just the way he can jump and cover space and get to the rim to block the shot in time. So he's the next guy. It's Beekman, Dunn, and then everybody else kind of filling in different roles. McNeely, who returned also, he can score, shoot the three. Had a couple of three-pointers last night for them early in the first few possessions to get them going. They're shooting the basketball a little better from deep. McNeely's a reason why. Groves is a reason why, and even Ryan Dunn a little bit. But in terms of what you got, I'd say Beekman and then Dunn, and then kind of everybody else falling in line behind. All
right, Craig. Here's perhaps the more important question when it comes to a Virginia roster. So Kihei Clark is done. He was there for 78 years, I think. So he's gone. And when I ask this, who's the next Kihei Clark, I don't mean who's the next point guard. I don't mean who's the next facilitator. I mean who's the next, oh my God, this guy's really annoying to play against, and why is he so pesky? Virginia's always got one of those guys. Who's their guy like that this year?
I guess this is Beekman's third year now. It's or fourth year rather. Maybe it's him. I don't know. The roster's turned over so much, and you don't know what to expect in terms of who stays, who goes. But Ryan Dunn's a sophomore. It's so tough to say because there's so many new players.
Yeah.
I think maybe down the road it could be Leon Bond. He's so athletic and so young that maybe there's time, right? He's a redshirt freshman, so he's already been in school a year, even though he hasn't played in games until this season. Maybe he's that guy down the road. But right now it's kind of hard to make that choice just because the roster's turned over so much.
Yeah, obviously, a lot in, a lot out. We're in the transfer portal era. We were just talking, obviously, we're deep in the weeds on football coaching this week with the Orange hiring a new coach, and we're talking transfer portal and all this stuff. And, I'm thinking about Virginia, won the title. We're such a great team there. And, I've been very good since, but, haven't won a tournament game. It's not quite to that level. How has that interacted with Virginia in the portal? Where is Virginia when it comes to, transfer portal activity and success in that realm?
Yeah, it's interesting because they had, key players on last year's team were portal guys. Jaden Gardner, Armand Franklin, particularly Ben Vanderplas, played a huge role, and I think that helped a little bit with some of the guys they added this year. Jordan Minor from Merrimack, though he hasn't played, and that's maybe the one area that Virginia's deficiencies could show up at some point and hurt them this season. They don't rebound the basketball particularly well in their 4 games against high major competition. A&M last night, West Virginia and Wisconsin down in Florida, and then against the University of Florida, they were out-rebounded, outclassed on the glass because they just don't have that dominant, physical, traditional rebounding type player. They played small at times last year with Gardner and Vanderplas in the 4-5 spots. This year, they don't even have anybody that can rebound the ball as well as those guys. The thought was it was going to be Minor coming in from Merrimack, who had done a really good job rebounding there and helping them, play well in the NEC. But it just hasn't translated. He hasn't played all that much, hasn't earned his way on the floor all that much. So that's an area, if you're wondering what might trip Virginia up at some point, it could be those rebounding, the rebounding area, because even last night they gave up, I think, 18 offensive rebounds to Texas A&M, and they defended really well after giving those up. But you wonder at what point could that come back to hurt them?
The Orange will be happy to hear that because Syracuse did come back late and actually out-rebounded LSU the other day, but that has not been a strong suit of the Syracuse team this year. And this and Greg Madia with us of the Daily Progress down in Charlottesville. What a contrast in styles, even more so than usual this year. Like, we know what Virginia is. Syracuse is trying to play fast this year. Like, is it possible to speed up this Virginia team, which it would be what the Orange are trying to do on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because that smaller lineup with Virginia, right? They're playing Beekman, Rohde, McNeely, Dunn, and you used Groves last night in the starting lineup instead of Blake Buchanan, the freshman. That's a smaller lineup with 3 guys who can handle the ball in Beekman, Rohde, and McNeely. And you wonder, is that good enough to not get sped up, right? I know Syracuse is trying to play some more man-to-man defense and then 2-3 zone like you're accustomed to seeing. If you're Virginia, is that good enough? Because last year, even in the NCAA tournament, they got sped up, and that's why they lost to Furman, right? Late in the game, the pressure was ratcheted up, and there was a bad turnover there that cost them the game. So it'll be interesting. I think because they haven't played as much together yet. It's 2 transfers and a starting lineup of 5. You wonder, can that chemistry continue to carry over like it did last night from one game to the next, or are there going to be some hiccups along the way?
Yeah, Greg, I don't want you to freak out when you're there on Saturday. They will not be playing zone to start the game, so don't lose your mind when that's what happens out there.
Yeah, it was interesting. I talked to a few of the Syracuse players today, right? Because they've got a couple of players from the Charlottesville area, and Justin Taylor and Malik Brown, and they were telling me, they're like, yeah, that's the big difference. That's the major difference. Trying to play more man to man and getting adjusted to that. So it's interesting to hear from their perspective on how the change has gone. But man, it'll be shocking. I'm sure some people showing up at JPJ on Saturday will be stunned when they're looking for that Syracuse zone and don't see it as much.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those two. I mean, Justin's from right there in Charlottesville. Malik's from a half hour down the road, or give or take. Give or take. Yep. So, what'd they tell you about how many they're expecting to bring with them in the crowd on Saturday?
Yeah, they said family, friends, former coaches, former teammates. So they're really looking forward to it. They said it was Justin Taylor who said, last year he went into the game with some nerves, right? Hadn't been back home to play yet. He said this year there's a little bit of anxiousness, a little bit of of that, but more so they just want to win the game. So I thought that was really interesting to hear, and it's cool for them getting to come back and play at home. Brown said it's one of the reasons why he went to Syracuse, knowing that he'd get a couple of games every season. He'd come back to the Commonwealth to play either Virginia or Virginia Tech.
Yeah, very cool for those guys to get to go home this weekend. All right, Craig, always good to chat and enjoy the game this Saturday, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.